We're live.
Live.
We are back. Episode 53.
Good to see you, dude.
You too, man. We haven't we've lately we've gone through like we'll do a couple of in 1 week and
Yeah.
then have enough and then we miss a week and then we come back and we do two or three and then we miss a week and so it's like we're on a every other week right now kind of thing,
Yeah.
but
It's
that
it's
happens.
it's mostly good stuff, like
Yeah.
you've been well, you had some illness but you've been doing some cool things and I've been busy
Yeah.
and I think the cool part about this project podcast is it affords us the ability to have that, right?
Yeah.
It's not like you're dependent upon an episode and I'm not dependent upon an episode, but man, I really enjoy them and I miss them when we don't.
Hmm.
But I do appreciate the fact that we both tried to maintain that one a week, even if it's sometimes two a week, or even if we jump three a week,
Yeah.
just to stay on course. But I don't know. I definitely think that I miss it for a reason different than the publication of it.
Mm.
A lot of these conversations have sparked a lot of thought, a lot of continuing thought after the episodes, and sometimes it's given me reflection of myself. Like, man,
Hmm.
you might be an idiot. You know, um, I listen to every episode actually to kind of one audio, one like how's the flow of the conversation, and some of
Yeah.
them, I remember them really well, and it's like 10-15 minutes into the podcast episode, I'm like, okay, everything's good. I remember this now, it's good. And then some of them I actually find myself not listening to myself as a listener, but like analyzing myself as an out of body example of
Mm.
myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's been kind of neat because, man, I'm opinionated. I try to draw hard lines on the things I firmly believe. And I think sometimes the lines get drawn a little hard on things that I don't actually understand why I believe.
Yeah.
You know,
Hmm.
I had a professor in college, pretty awesome. I mean, he was a mentor. He ended up being my advisor. And I did a series of plays for him as an actor in college. And the cool thing about him, he was really out of the box. He only confronted plays with very, very adult themed, and not sexually, like
Right.
adult topics.
Mm.
There was one that
Okay.
I remember in particular called Pink Toes. And this guy, his name was Dennis, phenomenal actor. He's been on TV a little bit, but he was just kind of like in a re-envisionment of his life, and he went back to college. And meeting him, getting to act with him, and then the female that was his opposite. And a lot of Phil's plays were either monologue or two person or like three or four person tops.
Yeah.
And they were all short acts, 15-20 minutes maybe.
Small
So he,
sets, very
yeah, yeah, very,
stripped
very
down.
intimate
Yeah.
settings. No, absolutely. Like you might have a clock on the wall, or you might have a bouquet of roses,
Yeah.
or bouquet, boutique,
I say
who
both.
knows? I do too. I'm just feeling good, so we'll just roll with it. But it was very simple set, and this particular subject in Pink Toes was written from the perspective of two perspectives: a truck driver and a young girl. And what happens is this young girl is walking down the road, hitchhiker, or as a hitchhiker, truck driver picks her up, basically, abuses her, kind of thing. And it's him in a jail cell giving his post arrest interview as his
Interesting.
monologue, and her monologue is post death, talking to her mother. And dude,
Interesting.
that was the kind of format. He would have these play nights that were 8-9 short plays long,
Hmm.
hour and a half total. And he'd have refreshments, and he'd have conversation about the pieces, like what moved you, what hurt you, what did you feel.
Mm.
Awesome guy. And to revert that back to the class, I'll never forget, coming out of high school, I'm going into college, I'm 18 years old. I remember literally my mindset on 9/11, and I still hold some of these same values, but the the thinking was incorrect. Right after 9/11, I came home and I was like, Mom, Dad, I'm going right now.
Hmm.
And my mom, her lifelong dream for one of us was to be the first in our family to go to college. And I was already in college.
Mm.
And she had worked at the college for years and years and years, retired from the college. But part of the deal for the employees at the time was as long as academic credibility was there, there was no tuition for the student.
Oh, okay.
So as her child.
Yeah.
So I was kind of back against the wall with what I believed and what she wanted and what she'd really worked her life for. So, I calmed down a little bit. But in the argument, I remember telling my parents, I was like, if they strapped 1,000-pound bomb to me and it killed 10,000 terrorists, I would be happy. And like that fervor of Americanism is
Mm-hmm.
still very deep within me. But I understand that that's a no-win situation as
Right.
far as it's just never a winning situation. As an example, so we're sitting in class and we're talking about some things, and he raises his hand, or he makes a question. He said, if you're a white person and you hate black people, raise your hand. Nobody's hands went up. And he said, if you're a black person that hates white people, raise your hand. Nobody's hands went up. If you're a man that hates women, raise your hand. If you're a woman that hates men,
Mm-hmm.
nobody raised their hands. He's like, man, we have got a fucking utopia. Like we're the best of the world that is to offer. And he said, let's cut the bullshit. Let's make it a little less imposing. He said, how many of you believe in God? And a few hands went up. And he said, okay, do you believe in God because you've invested in it and you've bled for it and you've read counter information and you've done all these things, or do you do it because your mama told you to? And dude, that statement
Mm.
changed my whole life. Like so many of the things that I believed and acted upon, um, carried with me the anger that I carried with me because of things that I believed, and judgment of other people because of
Mm-hmm.
things I believed, with no teeth in any of the arguments. I had never dissected myself. I'd never looked into the things that I was saying, believing, regurgitating, and it made me feel very, very small. And that just painted a picture for the rest of my life. It really did. It wasn't immediate, as far as like I didn't go out and just become, a better individual overnight, but I started to at least become a better thinker in regards to what I believe, what I feel,
Yeah.
why I feel it, why I believe it. And that's carried me through today. I think it's it's caused some uh, psychosis at times because I overanalyze shit to the
Yeah.
to the nth degree for my belief. Like I don't want to die on a hill that I don't actually believe in.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's just been an interesting turn, looking at myself, looking at the world around me, and kind of understanding that people are probably in this process of, they do believe things, they do have feelings on things. My concern is that we're not questioning these things, we're not asking why.
Yeah.
And kind
Because
of
most
to,
times when you do, like you said, the response is falls apart after one question,
well,
because there's no actual, like you said, teeth, but like there's no actual thinking behind
right.
anything that anyone's saying on either side. I remember a similar, like kind of in the same vein as your story I was in, when in high school we had like this like AP government class
Mhm.
or whatever. And I honestly, like with most high school classes, honestly, I don't honestly remember most of the stuff from the high school classes.
Yeah.
Uh, but we would do these. You'd get a like a either a partner or group of three, and you would do a debate on
Yeah.
a whatever topic against another group or another person.
Mm.
And I remember like not really taking it super seriously, even though I like knew in the position that I was given on one of them. I remember it was like, this is actually the position that I believe, because I
Yeah.
remember some of them like you're forced to argue the opposite position, which
Yep.
is good, like because that
For
makes
sure.
you research. But I was given the one, and I wasn't like taking it super seriously or whatever, because it was just like, this is kind of dumb. Like nobody takes these things seriously, and the conversation doesn't actually do anything in this room. So I'm just like, whatever. And then I remember like 3 or 4 years later, after I might have even been after I graduated college, when I really started getting into same thing. I had this moment where I'm like, I'm gonna actually learn about the
Mm.
things that I say I believe in,
Sure.
and make sure I still do, like,
Yep.
and do it for myself, and make sure I still believe in these things that I claim to believe in. And I remember having this, and I texted my best friend who was on my one debate team that day back in high school, and I texted him like, dude, if I went back with the knowledge I have right now, or and the confidence in the, not even just the confidence, but the ability to convey my thoughts and do so in a way that was coherent, right? Like I do right now, based on the last handful of years of taking this learning and all this kind of introspection seriously,
Hmm.
I would have laid waste to that debate room. And like that's like one of those things I'm like, I could have then, but it was just I didn't care. And I was like,
Yeah.
being 17 is just like this is kind of dumb.
Yeah.
None of this really matters right now. But then even throughout college, I'm like, and in college was when I started to see a lot of the stuff that we see now being the norm in the
Hmm.
universities in terms of squashing dissident thoughts
Yeah.
and kind of the more indoctrinating type of messaging that comes from a lot of universities. Like I remember starting to see that in a couple of my classes back in like 2010, 11, like my freshman year of college. I'm like, what are you talking about? I can't say this,
Right.
you know
Yeah.
and that, like, I remember that being the first time I had the thought where like I need to get my what together so
Mm.
I can be the person that can speak these things clearly
Mm.
and be able to answer questions and in the faith-based world, sort of like apologetics,
Sure.
right? Like be able
Yep.
to defend and ask questions and answer and go back and forth. And I remember that moment being like, there's a lot of people in this room that their whole worlds would fall apart with one question because they
Oh,
can't defend it,
there's no doubt about it. And I'll give you an interesting parallel. Um, the thought that I have, imagine jujitsu. Okay.
Yeah.
You have let's say a purple belt or a brown belt against a white belt. And it's just no contest. It's not even, I don't care how big, bad, strong you think you are. And this is a quote from Mitch McElroy. He took a seminar in Louisville with him. And cool thing about him is he made a very, very, again, another one of those light bulb moments. He said, jujitsu is time travel.
Mm,
And he said, the way that works is if you are a martial student against an instinctive opponent, you will always be ahead of their next move. So
mm-hmm.
it is literal in the moment time travel because you're controlling the flow and the speed and the movement of time
Yeah.
against their reaction to your timing. So that was a pretty cool moment for me to kind of hear that. But if you apply that to conversation or you apply that to communication at any level, and especially in the debate world, you have somebody who does like what we do. We talk a lot. We're on a podcast a lot. We think a lot on our feet. We think a lot beyond the interview because you don't want to sound like an idiot when you're speaking.
Right.
When you get into a conversation with an untrained speaker, with an untrained thinker, with an untrained debater, well, every single time that that has happened in my life where the debate at my level has felt like I'm talking just right now, asking questions, pointing
Yeah.
out ideas. Why are you so upset? Why are you
Yeah.
attacking me?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not. I'm asking very fundamental questions relative to the the beliefs you're stating. Like I don't want to argue if you can believe it or not. I just want to understand why you believe it.
Mm,
And man, they fall apart. They
yeah.
absolutely fall apart. And I think that brings us to a little bit what we wanted to talk about today is a lot of people don't even know why they're doing the things that they're doing.
Mm,
And you have this heightened conversation piece of imposter syndrome or people, fake it till you make it kind of thing. I understand the concept. I understand the idea behind it. If you want to be something, you have to do those things. You have to try to emulate those things. At that level, I get it. But I think to step a little bit forward and then come back, a lot of people are just hitting the wall of I'm doing all these things. I'm doing everything that all these people tell me I should be doing. I'm up at 4:30. I'm journaling. I'm doing the ice baths. I'm training. I'm taking jiu-jitsu. I'm on and on and on. The list of things to be a man. And I think the good thing about this podcast, if a female listens to it, it might give some insight to the way that men think. But I
yeah.
am definitely not ever speaking to women on this podcast as a guidebook. It's
Yeah.
it's literally you and I talking about our shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we found that a lot of guys relate to that. So this might be some understanding point for a woman, but a lot of guys message me, and I know they talk to you in your group about the pressures of everything that they're being told to do, the impossibility of maintaining all those things to do, and
Mm,
then feeling like they're getting no closer to their end goal of actually being a good man or a good
mm.
person. Um, what's your feeling on that, and what do you think that? I think as humans, the imposter syndrome is just a natural part of our existence. You know, until you really been validated, you're never sure.
Yeah.
But everybody's trying to be validated. Everybody is trying to be um, a somebody or around a quote unquote somebody.
Yeah.
And I understand there's a sense of irony in having a podcast. Like you and I are not deaf to that idea,
Right.
but at the same time, I think it becomes a very different approach. And we've talked about it at different levels when people start assuming, oh, because my life is good right now,
Yeah.
after 25 years or 30 years on this earth, I am now the expert on life. And the thing about it is, at 30 years old, my life looked like, oh, potential world champion powerlifter, healthy knees, making money hand over fist. And at 32, I was on my back for the next 4 years, 19 times for a month at a time after
Yeah.
every surgery, um, to the point that I put a pistol in my mouth in 2016, 2 years after my injury. So the book that I wrote, the Cube book that I wrote when I was on top of the world, and the brashness and a little bit of the bravado that I exposed in that book, one was rooted in insecurity of self.
Mm.
I had to speak that way, think that way, to believe that way.
Right.
But also, it was it reconfirmed or redirected any misbelief from the outside about who I was.
Mm.
I had to make people believe that I was tough and that I was a badass because I didn't believe that I was, you know, and I felt that throughout the experience of it. I felt that I was out of balance with myself. And then after the fall, and this is what I don't think a lot of people experience in their own lives, is I had a literal fall from grace, broke my legs.
Yeah.
And on the heels of that, all of that bravado, all of that tough talk, all of that Billy Badass, 10 feet tall and bulletproof was gone.
Mm-hmm.
I was not that man. I was, it's just like, we may not kill him, but we'll prove that he can bleed in 300 when he,
Right.
when he cuts Xerxes.
Yep.
Only, a god can't bleed.
Yep.
And I think, to borrow from that, I thought I was untouchable. I thought I was unbreakable. Um, and I learned very, very harshly that I wasn't. Now, I think the ramifications for a lot of men that we talk to, consequences aren't so dire, but they find themselves in situations that check those boxes of success, check those boxes of I'm doing something, I'm doing the right things,
Mm-hmm.
and they still have that feeling.
Yeah.
Where do you think that's rooted inside of those people? And do you think that there is a one size fits all program of discipline to catalyst, as a
Yeah.
catalyst for people to move forward?
So I think a lot of that feeling or that experience when I'll just use the example. So I remember, and it was a really popular for the weekend talking point last year at Winter Strong. Like that
Yep.
was kind of the thing where everybody was told there's way cooler people in this room than you. Like
Yeah.
everybody
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
told that, and that's the truth. Like no matter how awesome you are, there's somebody that's cooler in that room
Sure.
that at something. And so I understood that, but I never necessarily felt the imposter part of like I shouldn't be here, and that
Mm,
wasn't a confidence like a arrogant type of statement. But I'm like, look, I've built good relationships with people that I consider friends, and they wanted me to come hang out. Like,
mhm,
and we're always talking about the value that you can bring to communities. And I think a lot of people see things like this and they have this feeling because it's the comparison game.
mhm,
Like it's always that like they don't believe that they should be in these situations because they're comparing the person that's ahead of them in that same situation. Like, well, if he's here, I'm not as good as him. Why am I here?
right.
Like rather than looking at what am I specifically bringing to this table that is of value, whether it's like a skill or something, or maybe it's just like you're a good friend and we enjoy having you around to talk to. Like
Mm,
there's there's not like a tangible exchange of something that is your ticket in.
right.
Like I think that is where a lot of people in those types of situations try to do something to get in,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Because they're thinking it's like I have to do this thing or bring this specific skill or this trade or this
Yeah.
thing to get into this club,
Yep.
right? And it's like I'm always trying to get into the club by doing something rather than how we've talked about it several times, like flip it around and turn it inward on yourself, on your family, and like just enhance the crap out of that.
Yeah.
Like, and then that ripple effect outwards, you'll get that. Not, and not that it's even about recognition to a degree, but since we're talking about like getting into these levels of success and trying to understand, do I belong here or not? I mean, I've been in plenty of rooms where I've sat at tables with people and I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool, right? Like that's
Yeah.
how I always look at, like, there's some hitters here. And like,
Yeah.
and I'm actually talking about real stuff. Like I'm talking business with people who are literal, like a literal billionaire,
Yeah.
right? And like,
Hmm.
that's a pretty cool experience. And
Right.
so I'm like, well, I am so far away from even that a 1% financial
What is a
level
billion
of that.
dollars?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that a
Exactly.
real? Is that a real
What do you
thing?
mean a billion? Like I can't even fathom that number.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
but those kind of conversations, but it's more of a, I think it happens because we're constant, and you said it before we hopped on, we're constantly exposed to what everybody else is doing all the time.
Hmm.
Like we're always seeing what everyone else is doing.
Yep.
And that, and there's the phrase that comparison is the thief of joy.
Hmm.
And even though the things in your own life might be going super well, right? I remember like people saying like, man, I was doing really great and I thought I was on the right track, and then I show up to this place, I'm like, dang, I'm way not where I need to be. And there's something there where you should still have things to strive for, and
Yes.
have those people that are farther along the path than you as motivation, or to try and see what's possible,
Yeah.
right? But to say just because they're here, I'm a failure if I'm not what they are,
Yeah.
like that's where I think it really starts to mess with guys' minds.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I do, and I think that you touched on a really good point that is a clarification for people that might be on the fence of imposter syndrome or feeling like they don't belong.
Yeah.
The thing that I love that you mentioned, you said, I look around and it's like, no, I've built a successful training business. I've been a coach. I've got successful men's groups. You never once, never, ever, ever once, Jesus, I sound like my papa. He never ever once mentioned anything about your social media. You mentioned tangible, markable things that you have achieved. And I think that might be a flip flop point for the world today, because a lot of the people that you're referring to, I can think of a couple guys in that B category of
Yeah.
money wealth that come to Winter Strong. There's several in the M category that come to Winter Strong.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about those people, you don't become a millionaire or a billionaire 15 years ago because of crazy video editing. You
Right.
had to do some shit.
Yeah.
And that's the tier of those people. So I think there are certain scenarios, like maybe a Winter Strong, where the brunt, I won't say all, there's some people there that have definitely just made their name on the internet and
Yeah.
through crafty media and whatnot. Not knocking that necessarily,
Right.
but I think guy sitting on the couch looking at, okay, here's a person with 200,000 followers that does really cool shit all the time, and here's a guy with $1 billion. Is it easier for me to craft my social media to get 200,000 followers, or to build a business that makes $1 billion? And what is my worth, like
Right.
non-monetary worth, after I do those two things?
Mm.
And I think somebody who becomes successful in business has to craft and build so many components to who they are in that process.
Yeah.
I think that when you get to that point, when you become that billionaire, that might be the time that you fall apart, because you've done everything you've ever wanted to do. You have the capacity now to do anything and everything that you ever want to do. How do you wake up with discipline then? That's a question. You look at somebody else on the other side that it's like, holy shit, I've got all these millions of views on every single video. What is the next thing that I have to make? And the next thing. So the person sitting there starts to look at those two people and just like, okay, if I do these things, that's the invite. If I do
Right.
these cool videos, that's my invite. If I hang out with the right people, that's my invite.
Mhm.
If I show that I'm at all the right places, that's my invite to the next thing and the next thing. And I question, and I've quoted this before, or I've said this as a quote before, you know, don't just come to the table for the food,
Mm.
bring some food to share so I can eat too.
Yep.
You know, and that's the problem with a lot of this current culture where there's no exchange. There's just, I'm here. Aren't you happy?
Yeah.
Like, I'm here. That's enough because I'm Brandon Lilly. You know, that type of mindset is
Mm.
pervasive and it's invasive. Um, I'm curious about helping men differentiate between those 2 points.
Mm.
Like, you start a business, you make, let's just say you make enough money to bump your income 50%.
Mm-hmm.
That is attainable. That is within grasp of so many people. Um, and that is sustainable.
Yeah.
You may work 50 years and never become a billionaire. You may work 50 years and fail at every single thing you do, but there will be lessons in there. There will be values in there. And I think if you're shooting for $1 billion, you'll probably land at 1 million, you know, like
Right.
that kind of deal. But I just wonder how we can help people see that the value is not in the $1 billion. The value is not in the 200,000 followers.
Mm.
The value is in who you become in those pursuits. And if you're not actually changing or actualizing the things that you want to become, you're only becoming what other people tell you to become. I think you're going to end up with a lot of the same frustrations, sadness, disappointment, feelings of inadequacy, feelings of, you know, no worth.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's a tricky thing to navigate to help people find the path to who do I want to be and how do I become that, and answer it truthfully. Not, do I want to be like Bert Soren? Do I
Right.
want to be like Josh Smith or John Dudley or Cam Haynes? Do I want to be those guys, or do I want to look at how they do everything
Yeah.
and emulate the how?
Yeah.
You know, they get up early. Okay, great. Is 4:30 my early, or is 6:30 a more accommodating early to my life, to my schedule, to those
Yeah.
things? I don't know that enough people are taking that second step.
And if we think about it, the analogy that came to mind was like, I'll make a music analogy, right?
Good.
Obviously. And so when I'm sure you were the same, and I still do have these like just midday sort of dreams or like daydreams and fantasies in my head of being like the rock star, right? Like
Yeah.
I'll hear a song, I'm like, dude, this would be so rad to play this song live and all this
Yeah.
kind of stuff. But when you're young and you're trying to and you have that dream of being playing in front of tens of thousands of people, playing at Wembley, like all this stuff, just ripping it on a stage, you're not dreaming about being that famous playing somebody else's songs.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's because I want to have the songs that I wrote be that good to where I can do this. So like nobody wants to be the world's most famous cover band,
Right.
you know? And so like even though that might be super fun, like to
Kiss with
just
three S's.
exactly. And so but when you look at it from that perspective, it's the same. We do that, we tend to do it in business or
Yeah.
like in anything else. It's like, well, I'm trying to do exactly what he does to get that outcome because I want his life.
Yeah.
But it's like you can take those lessons without taking like just like using the template that Josh Smith did or whatever to build MKC,
Yeah.
right? Like nobody's going to do it the way Josh did because nobody
No.
else is Josh.
Right.
Like he's the
Nobody
only
else
one
was
that could have done it that way.
the youngest bladesmith, master bladesmith ever. 19 years old, given that distinction and notoriety.
Yeah.
And even then, to Josh's credit, I don't remember the years. It's at least 20. I know that he owned the title to Montana Knife Company.
He said he bought it in like 2002 or something like
Yeah, yeah.
that.
It's been about
Yeah.
20 years, and
Yeah.
it took 18, 19 years to become a reality.
Mhm.
That is powerful belief and vision.
Yeah.
That is not just, oh my God, this name is available, this company trademark is available.
Right.
Okay, now I'm just going to start pumping out knives. No, he had to be a master smith
Yeah.
at an elite level,
For a
building
long time.
$5,000, $10,000 knives for I don't remember who it was, a prince or a sheikh or somebody over in the
Mhm.
Middle East. I mean, that level of quality for somebody who has the money to buy anything in the world, and they're buying yours.
Yeah.
Now, that's the problem, is that we don't have enough people making high end things and then figuring out how to not reduce, but bring
Yeah.
that down to a volume measure. And
Right.
that's what Josh has done so successfully, is that he
Yep.
is taking high quality bladesmithing, figured out how, okay, how can we make something that's tough, light, dependable, sharpenable, and build a community around that. he already knew how to build the knives. He already knew how to make fantastic knives. The hard thing in that point was building a community of belief around something that he already did very, very well. What I'm seeing a lot of on the other side now, and no fault for anyone making knife. I love making knives. I have a hard time watching people want to be a knife maker because that is the chic thing right
Now
now.
it's like the cool thing.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
again, dude, you can look at me and call me a cliche for all the things that I do. I do jujitsu. I shoot bows. I do all, like I am a carbon copy, but those things have been aspects of my life since I was a kid.
Right.
Not necessarily jujitsu, but
Right.
I took martial arts when I was a kid, briefly. So it was always an interest of mine, but they just have different forms now, and I have different accessibility now.
Yeah.
I think that too many times we're trying to hit the home run with our ideas instead of just getting singles and moving runners around.
Yeah.
You know, that's what successful business is. Very, very few people have the light bulb idea that becomes the $1 million idea overnight. Even some of the guys like the ShamWow guy. I watched a documentary on that dude. It took him like 37 tries
Yeah.
to get the product to where it was. Freaking Colonel Sanders. He was like 68 years old when he established his famous recipe.
Yep.
So those are the people that motivate me a lot more than, oh my God, I've started this business and now I'm a $5 million a year. Like that's amazing. But if it took you 2 years to do it, is it sustainable for 20? Is it, like, is this your passion or did you just look
Yeah.
at it and say, I want to make money? And those types of people are very cool. That's a very successful endeavor to just make money. But I tend to gravitate more towards people that, man, I wish I could make money with my purpose. I wish I could make money with my skill set.
Yeah.
And I just think that a lot of people are struggling where to put their feet,
Yeah.
as on this journey. Like, what's the next step? What's the next step? How do I find my own path? Maybe, and I think that's a cool way to put it too. When you're walking through the woods, there's a big main trail usually that all the animals take, and then there's side trails.
Yep.
Well, I think sometimes you need to weave back on the main trail. Am I on the
Yeah.
right path? Am I doing the right things? And then weave back on your own. It's
Still
not
heading the
like
right direction.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the piece of advice that I would give people to help them understand that, because man, it's without my injury, I would never think the way that I think. Without the use of very, very uh, guided endeavors into psychedelics, I don't think I would see the world or myself the same. I think it took all of that to break the ego that I had built of who I was as a man, because who I was as a man was a projection, and then I was trying to live the reflection. I was trying
Yep.
to live like, it's like Macho Man Savage or a Hulk Hogan
Yeah.
without every intention. It's Terry Boella, but he's Hulk Hogan everywhere he goes. And that became the reality for me. Was I can remember, you're not Brandon Lilly. Oh, you're Brandon Lilly, the power lifter.
Right.
Or, oh, dude, you're that strong guy, Brandon Lilly, right? And man, when somebody didn't say that, I was like, I am the strong guy. You know this, right? I am the
Right.
power lifter, Brandon Lilly.
Right.
So helping just the guy get to a point where he's like, this is who I am, and I'm okay with that. Now, what do I do with it? What do people do with that? What do people do when they ask that fundamental question of who I am or who am I?
It's going to cause a lot of, and I don't like to even do the thing where you spend all that time just looking at all the things you've done,
Yeah,
right? Like there's no, like at a certain point, there's no point to that.
right.
And so you have to be introspective for a little bit to say, what are the, like this, how we started this conversation, what are the things that I actually believe,
Hmm.
and do I actually believe those things? Like
Yep.
test them, right? Put yourself in the positions to test whether or not this is actually something that I want to, like you like we said, like die on this hill for.
Right.
And if it's not, there's a lot of action that needs to take place. And if there is, there's a lot of action that needs to take place, because now you have that main trail direction. Like,
Right.
these are all my core beliefs, and this is how I need to, like, this is the person that I am, and I'm good with this, and this is who I know I am. I've got my main trail now.
Yeah.
And so that will in itself, taking that time, and this is what, like, this is why we talk about journaling as much as we do. Not that that's
Hmm.
like the be all end all, but as a tool, that's super helpful for answering a lot of these questions to a degree,
Hmm.
right? And so once you get to that point, you have that main trail, this is, I had a podcast. This actually was the one from this week
Yeah.
with Matt Reynolds. We were talking about like, dude, just go now, take the step, like start walking down the trail and you'll refine and like, you might have to take that side, that side trail that loops way around and then comes back, but you can't just stand in that spot
Yeah.
because you're never going to refine any of those skills. You're never going to advance any farther because you're worried about, what am I going to do before I need to get everything ready before I take that first step,
Yeah.
And Matt used the great example because he was talking about coffee. He's like, dude, I bought this super expensive coffee machine. He's like, I wasn't gonna watch 1,000 YouTube videos on how to make great coffee out of it before I even did. He's like, I opened it and I made one and it was terrible. And he's
Yeah.
like, it took me a while to learn out how to use the machine to make a really good one for that machine.
Yep.
And that's how you have to do it. So I
Yeah.
think that with when we're going back to this imposter thing and the comparison, we're always looking at the final product or the end result of all these people without realizing, like with Josh, like he didn't make mass production knives until 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Like he
Exactly.
owned the domain Montana Knife Company for 20 years and then
Yeah.
was a lineman.
Yeah.
Like, and did another job for 15 years before he jumped in and took this thing all the way. But he was still working on his craft throughout that entire time, getting better, understanding all of the back end stuff that goes along with making and selling high end knives, like building that skill set. So then he wasn't just standing in that spot at the beginning of the trail
Yeah.
for that
Well,
long.
I'll tell you something else too that you mentioned there is the side hustle or the main job for your side hustle. A lot of people have this idea that you just, oh man, I'm going to quit my job, move my family, or move across country and start a t-shirt business, and I'm going to start making millions or whatever it is. I was looking at a rapper, guy goes by the name of T Grizzly.
I like that name.
He's a rapper. I don't know too much about him. I just saw his story, but he is making pretty good money in the rap business. He's still a waiter at a very high end restaurant in
Oh,
I think
really?
it's in LA. He works like 2 or 3 jobs outside of the rap game, and
Crazy.
he was. And the thing about him, and I don't know if this is true or not. Like I said, I've read one article and heard maybe 2 songs of his.
Yeah.
Not particularly a fan of him as a musician, but I'm a fan of this message.
Yeah.
He said, the songs I wrote was when I was working these hustles to live.
Mm.
Just because they're hits doesn't mean I'm not going to be starving next week. And he was like, I can get all this money and I can blow all this money and I can have all these women and I can have all these cars and this house and this and this and this, but then I got to write another song. And then I got to write another song and another song and I got to keep being relevant. He said, I go to work, I get paid. Period.
Mm-hmm.
My kids are going to eat. I'm going to eat. And if this side hustle takes off and then I don't have to worry about money one day, okay, good. But I'm still worried as hell out of money right now.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty cool thing for a kid that's 19, 20 years old, probably got every music producer or whatever in his face saying, I'll give you this, I'll give you that, I'll give you this. He's like, no, I got to work a shift tonight.
Yeah.
I just don't think there are enough young people that are looking at, and this might take 20 years and it might take 2 or 3 jobs at a time to support that extracurricular hobby. But how are you going to do it if you don't?
Right. It's the
We
long-term vision.
Yes, and I think that too many times, well, we're just a hack system.
Yeah.
I know you're a Tim Ferriss guy. That's my only gripe about Tim Ferriss.
He's very hacky.
He is the hack guy.
Yeah.
And I don't fault people for finding smarter ways to operate.
Yeah.
But when you are constantly trying to circumnavigate the best way to do things and think
Right.
that you can find a better way, that is not success.
Right.
That is shortcutting. That is shortcutting yourself, shortcutting your potential. But I just don't know that we're instilling. Definitely, if you look at the evidence based on men our age, I think that is a lacking point. Is
Yeah.
that the people that are at the top telling you quit your job, leave your wife, move across country, start a business, are not adding into the fact that, well, before the internet, it took me 15 years to build this business so I could sit on the internet and tell you to buy my program. They didn't become millionaires overnight,
Right.
but they're not saying that. They're not telling you about, now you see it like with the Jeff Bezos and the Bill Gates and the Musk meme where it's like, this is where Amazon started. This is where Microsoft started.
Yeah.
You'll see it in that context. But I think a lot of these guys that are sitting on top of the throne at the moment are failing to explain dreams don't just happen because you chase them.
Mm.
You have to have a life in absence of your dreams, and not to say that that's without them. That is just to say you have to feed your kids, you have to put them to bed, you have to coach, you have to be a husband, all these things. And then once those things are done, then you work on your hobby. That's why you have those
Right.
midnight oils, the 2 o'clock in the morning, sitting up typing on your computer trying to make it go. It just, the psychology of people in this direction is really bothersome to me.
Yeah. There's
You
a
know, and
oh, go ahead.
we- I, I was just going to say, I think that we've lied to ourselves into thinking that we are all special, that we are all
Yeah.
going to get our dreams, that we are all going to have everything that we want. How do you break the imposter syndrome mold? How do you get to a point where it's like, man, I did not get that thing that I wanted, but holy shit, my life is still pretty good.
Hmm.
Because that is a curse, that is a curse word or a curse phrase in this society. My life is pretty good
Yeah.
is like, oh, then you don't want it bad enough, or you're
Yeah.
just fucking comfortable. Well, you piece of shit. You're living in a mansion. You're driving a Rolls Royce, or you're driving a Lamborghini, or you've got one of those G wagons from Mercedes. You got pedicures and manicures, and you get your hair cut for $500. Don't tell me you're not living comfortably. Well, this is chosen discomfort. Okay, bro. Like,
Right.
it's not the same as like you're living in the street. Okay, don't
Right.
give me that bullshit. But people believe it.
Yeah.
People believe that these morons that get up there and talk like that are living this like hard nosed, challenged existence. Why do they show you the mansion? Why do they show you the fancy cars and the swimming pools and the women and all this other stuff? Because they have to make you believe that
Yeah.
that is worth it. You look at the people that I would assume that the people that you admire, it's not Dan Bilzerian. Like,
Right.
I do not want that lifestyle.
No.
I don't want 500 women around me. I don't want a house in every coast or any whatever it is. Like, I don't see the appeal, and I don't understand why people are chasing it, because it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
It's not a sustainable thing. And are any of those women there because Dan's a nice guy? Right? Are they there because he's a good guy? Or are they there because he has money and drugs and and it's the place to be? It's
Yeah.
the photo to be in,
Yeah.
right? Where are the people that are just living really good, solid lives that don't have to tell you how much money they make? They don't have to show you that they live in a mansion. Where are they at? And why aren't they telling men how to live a little better?
Yeah.
You know?
There was a he was actually he coached me for a little while, a couple years back, leading up to that first jujitsu competition that I did.
John
James.
Danaher? Nice.
I would have done way better had he. I take that back. But no, James. His name's James Fuller, and he does
Mhm.
all the old time strongman stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. And and I talked to him for the podcast. He was great because he was talking about the symbiotic relationship of that style of training and grappling, because it's like
Mhm.
all these guys back in the early 20th century, late 19th century, they were all wrestlers on
That's
top of
why they
doing all this.
trained.
That's why they trained. And
Yeah.
so he's like, the style that we're building strength through mobility, anyways, all this stuff. So I'm like, I worked with him for a while, and I got to know him, and he's like one of the most brilliant men in terms of training I've ever
Mhm.
talked to. Like,
Yeah.
and from a historical, like, he's like a historian when it
Right.
comes to this stuff too. So he's got that type of knowledge, then he's got the actual coaching and technical knowledge on top of it. And
Yep.
he's made, and his full-time gig is to work maintenance at like these rest stops on overpasses on the freeway.
Mhm.
That's his full-time gig.
That's awesome.
And I asked him, like, do you do a lot of coaching and stuff like that? Yeah, I was like, I have a handful. He's like, I'm pretty picky about people I bring on. And I'm like, so how come you're still doing this, if you don't mind me asking? He goes, I just need something that pays the bills, that I can do something during the day that's not, it's kind of mindless. I can just go in and do my task, and I can use my brain power to think about training and
Yeah.
get better in my, he's like, when I'm doing stuff throughout the day, he's like, my mind is thinking about these training concepts or how I'm going to apply this to the people that I coach. So I need a job that doesn't require a lot of that type of brain power, because I like to save it for my
Yeah.
thing over here. And I'm like,
Yep.
that's the freaking coolest thing ever. Like, this dude could be, I mean, at the top of the coaching mountain in
Mhm.
terms of business,
Yep.
right? Like, he could be just, I mean, he could have coaches working under him. He could have this massive empire of coaching, bringing this old style of training back, right?
Yeah.
Because it's awesome.
Mhm.
And he's like, no, man, I just like to do my thing, and I'll coach people that want to work with me, and I'll help them best I can. I'll give them great training programs. I'll coach them. He's like, I just like to do this thing over here because it pays my bills and it keeps me focused. I'm like, dude, that is the freaking coolest thing ever.
I agree. Have you seen the documentary Pulling John?
No.
John Berzing, he was an arm wrestler. Like he's like the Gordon. Well, Gordon Ryan is like the John
Okay.
of like 20 something years undefeated. Not like 60, 70 matches, like
Wow.
20 years. And he's just a short dude. Got a good stocky build, but he's a airplane mechanic for Delta. And
Okay.
the reason he took that job was because you get free flights, and he couldn't afford to go to the competitions as a young arm wrestler.
Yeah.
So he took that job, and guess what? He becomes a foreman on it. He's making probably 150, 200 grand a year as a flight mechanic. And that is what allowed, and he still does it to this
Yeah.
day. He's still, I mean, he may be retired now. The documentary's a decade old or so, but
Okay.
it's very, very good. And it shows you, you know, a very real look at a lot of these niche sports,
Yeah.
and they're champions. You know, without Gordon Ryan, who are the? I mean, there's maybe 10 guys in jiu-jitsu worldwide that are, because of on the mat performance, can make a living.
Right.
The peripheral stuff is how I made money in powerlifting. It was never because I got paid at meets. It was the
Right.
coaching, it was the seminars, it was the instructionals, it was whatever it was. It was
Programs. Yeah.
yeah. So I was always working a side hustle.
Yeah.
Even though the money maker was my hobby, I had to make the work come from the hobby.
Right.
And I found too at times, you know, I was thinking about some of the writers that I love, and sadly they all committed suicide. But one of the things that I heard, it might have been it might have been a biographer about Hemingway,
Okay.
but he was like, the reason that he went mad is that the words were still inside and he couldn't get them out.
Mm.
And the thing I believe that so many people think of, like, if I went out here and shot 1,000 arrows a day to become the best archer, would I become the best archer in the world?
Right.
There's no guarantee or promise of that. At some point, there's probably going to be diminishing point of returns.
Right.
You know, so when you have these hobbies, when you have these things that you're excited about, I do agree with what your coach said. You have to step away from them, or that fire burns out.
Yeah.
That's why burnout is such a common thing right now,
Totally.
because you see so many people go so hard because they are so, it's just like the guy with his last dollar buying a lottery ticket.
Yeah.
Like, this is the one, this is the thing. And they think that they found it, and maybe they did, but they ruin it because they think it has to become a thing, a legitimized thing now. It can't have iterations and evolutions and grow. And then before, you know, I don't remember who said it, but it might have been Poloniak. But he was like, if you have an idea, protect it.
Mm.
He said, hold it close to your chest, breathe. No, it was McCarthy. He's like, an idea just has to be an ember,
Mm.
and you have to be the breath, you know, and like protect that. Do not share it, and don't expose it before it's a flame.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a toasting ember right now. And we have to build that out and build that out and build that out. And unfortunately, most people don't have $2 million sitting in the bank that they can just take an exodus from life and work on this
Right.
project.
Yep.
I think if people would just take a step back and say, you know what, this is the thing. I want to make it so good, so good, that when it does get that light, when it does catch flame, it's infallible, you
Yeah.
know. And that was Jordan Peterson's argument for his book taking 10, 12 years to write. He said he literally scrutinized every word of every sentence. And he said, to a point of psychosis,
Yeah.
but that book stands pretty strong. You know, it's a pretty good testament to that model, I think. And you know, a lot of people run when they hear Jordan Peterson these days, which is insane to me. I don't agree with everything he says, but to just cast the baby out with the bathwater is insane. But I do wish that there was a little bit more of that. Build a life, build your life through the things that you do. Don't build your life around the things that you do.
Mm.
You know,
Mhm.
that has been a more enjoyable, sustainable model for at least a person like me, who I've told you, I struggle with the comparison. I struggle with
Yeah.
competition to the point that I make personal relationships competitive, you know, and I look back at, well, why does this person like them more than me? Or why does this person prefer them? Or, those kind of
Yeah.
things. It's all detrimental. If somebody if somebody doesn't get you, that's just fine. It doesn't have to be any other way. But I think when we keep trying to force through the same doors because it's the right person that you're supposed to be around, or it's the right place that you're supposed to be, you lose that. You lose that individuality because you probably compromise something to get in the door.
Well, not only that, but that's obvious to everybody else too.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like I mean, it's so obvious when you meet somebody where that is the goal.
Yeah.
Like if the goal is just to be there, you can pick that out.
Yeah.
You can sniff that out so fast.
Yeah.
And there's so much of that because, and to your point about the idea being the ember you got to protect. I think part of it is because so many people are like, the second they've got a modicum of a thought, it's like, I got
Hmm.
to tell everybody about this. I
Yeah.
got to, this is the thing I'm doing now.
Yep.
And it's like, I mean, I'm all for doing the ready, fire, aim approach once you've got something that you can begin to refine,
Yeah.
right? But the second that there's something that because it's just attention seeking. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, I've got this new thing now. This is what I'm doing. Come follow
Yep.
me, right? This
Well,
come
it,
see what's going on.
it's like the unintentional LARP,
Yeah,
right? Like there, and I could definitely look at my Instagram and point the finger and say that dude's a LARP. I like to and I like to try new things. I like to experience new things. I like to try iterations of things I'm already doing.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I am playing a role of pursuing my life. If you want to say that's LARPing, fine. To me, I'm not profiting from it. I'm
Yeah,
not selling you on what I'm doing. That's where it becomes problematic to me. It's like, oh, jujitsu's hot. Well, I'm doing jujitsu now.
yeah,
Now here's my jujitsu training model. Now here's this and here's this and this. Oh, by the
yeah,
way, now I'm into compound archery. So here's
right.
my compound archery training model. Here's my t-shirt about shooting compound archery. Here's my video program about, it just, when it becomes that just might as well be a
It's
skunk to
just the
me.
finding the it's the reason it's the TikTok effect. It's
Sure.
finding the trending sound
Yep.
and making your own version of that video so it gets plugged into the explore page where everybody's
Yeah.
going to see it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's no there.
No. Well, and I think, maybe to kind of shift away from this topic after nearly an hour, I'll just kind of close out for anybody that is just looking for confirmation that it doesn't always work to be that pointed missile.
Mm,
It's success is not straight flight. It's usually a
right.
circle. You're going to have to go around and around the same circle to find different points that you miss, different points that you can build on. But I think I would encourage anybody to start with. I mean, this is what I had on a psychedelic trip one time. If I could go back to the first thing, really bad thing I remember happened to me was like 8 years old, 7 years old, and well, 6 years old. There was an incident that kind of shifted the dynamic with me and my parents because I was accused of a lie I didn't lie about, and it was in a scenario where there was a teacher type figure that told my parents I was involved in something that I wasn't,
Mm,
and I remember going through and like begging them to believe me because I could feel like I felt the weight of their disappointment. And I was so upset by it, and I was like I didn't do it. I didn't do it. I swear I didn't do it. And I got the spanking,
hmm
and from that point on, I looked at my life and I was like, well, if the truth gets your ass busted, just tell them what they want to hear,
mm,
you know? And as a 6 year old, that's probably a very damaging effect. And that type of mentality, whether it was just saying what needed to be said to get out of a situation or lies by omission or whatever it was, haunted me for years and years and years because I thought that was the modus operandi of, staying out of trouble, you know?
right.
So I think that a lot of people can fall into patterns because of our past, because of experiences that we felt, because of all these things that can dictate what we do now. So you have to go back to that. Like before I was hurt, before somebody changed the way that I looked at myself, before somebody changed how I looked at the world around me, what did I want to be? Like, what did I think was
Mm,
good? because I remember, as a kid being very, very small and thinking, man, I want to be an army man, or I want to be an astronaut or a fireman. Okay, that may not be what I want to be now, but that imagination aspect of life. And I think what happens, whether you want to say it as a study effect of the pineal gland,
Mm-hmm.
they talk about how the pineal gland in America is one of the smallest, because even though this is the land of hopes and dreams, those dreams get squashed pretty early.
Yeah.
The creativity gets squashed out of you fairly early because you're forced to learn what they want you to learn. And I think that you need to go back and start decluttering some of that effect. Like, why do I? It all goes back to what we talked about in the beginning. Why do I believe the things that I do? Why do I act the way that I do? Why do I engage with women the way that I do? Why do I do these things the way that I do? And I like to play that game on anything. I call it the 7 whys.
Mm.
Well, why am I doing this? Well, it feels good. Okay, that's not good enough. What's the next why? And if I get to 5, I'm probably justifying why I want to do it.
Yeah.
If I can get to 7, I move now. If I can tell you 7 whys of an action, it's undeniable.
Yeah.
If you're at 1 why, well, it's going to get me more followers. That is not enough. It is going to make me a little more money. That is not enough. It's going to make me a better person. Okay, we're getting there. It's going to benefit my family. Okay, this is a little deeper water. This is going to bring me closer to God, maybe, or this is going to bring me closer to a long-driven goal. Okay, now we're at 4. What's 5? What's the next thing? This is a promise I made somebody that I would see it through. We got to go.
Mm.
And if there's 2 more, it's undeniable go. It's absolutely have to go.
Yeah.
But if I get to that 3-4 range, I still have to find another reason to do it. Like this is probably just masturbatory satisfaction at 1, 2, and 3. At 4, 5, and 6, it's probably progressive production, and at 7, it's undeniable.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the scale that I operate around is the 7 whys.
I like that.
But to change the subject now, or to ask your version of that first, I wanted to talk about the baseball game last night. Did you see it?
I didn't watch the whole thing, but I saw like later on the highlights and the clips from it. Dude, this is like the coolest tournament ever.
Yeah. Well,
like,
they finally
seriously.
got some name players playing in it, like.
Well, and I've been listening to a lot of guys, I still listen to sports radio a lot.
I listen to baseball games on the radio when I drive.
I love that.
Dude, I do too. Don Drysdale back in the 50s and 60s.
Radio baseball announcers are the best in the business at broadcasting.
Yep.
The radio guys specifically.
Absolutely.
That's Vin. That's Vin Scully.
Dude.
Wordsmith of, think about all the dead time in a baseball game that he would just paint word pictures, and they were hilarious, and they were topical, and like just to fill the 42 seconds between pitches. Like nobody did it like Vin. But
we have Kaywood Lefford was that guy at UK basketball.
Yeah.
He was 50 years as the announcer. Harry Carey for the Reds and then the Cubs.
Yeah.
So they're iconic.
Can I think of the Mariners guy?
Oh, dude, he was who's Don Cherry. Did you ever listen to him about hockey in Canada?
No.
You need to go to some Don Cherry clips on YouTube, because that dude, he got stuffed after September 11th. He was like, they asked him about what he thought about it on air. They asked him what he thought about 9/11, and he said, he said, you get a battery, you take these terrorists, and he said, black's negative, red's positive, touch them nuts and light them up.
Oh my gosh.
That's Don Cherry. But he's just, those guys, it's just a different time. And I remember we used to watch basketball games, UK basketball. We would mute the TV and put Kaywood Lefford on the radio and do it that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, the baseball. So my son's playing right now. They just kicked off their season. And you and I know, or
Dave Niehaus. That was the Mariners one.
Yep.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's all good, man. Baseball is just such a different game than anything else. Defense controls the ball. It's a methodical, situational game, unlike anything else, and that's why I fell in love with it. Plus, I'm a stats geek, and my dad got me a couple of books when I was a kid, like historical facts about baseball or statistic analysis of baseball. Like I'm a kid, 9, 10 years old, and reading these books and looking at home run records and all the season records and the hit records and Pete Rose stuff and the Ty Cobb stuff and the Honus Wagner card and all these other things. Baseball just really captivated me for a number of reasons. Plus, it's like you get into the Negro leagues and you look at some of those players. You get into Japanese baseball and you think, man, this guy had 800 home runs. This guy threw 240 pitches in a game. It's like, but the Japanese model of baseball is pretty interesting. It's a lot like powerlifting in a sense, or strength training in a sense. They don't let their pitchers throw high velocity over 70%, but they'll throw 500 pitches a day. But like they start at you're 15 feet away. I'm going to use my mechanics, but I'm going to soft release the ball. It's all finger roll. Yep. There's no velocity at all. They throw 100 that way. They back up to 30 feet. They throw 100. They back up to 45 feet. They throw 100. And then they're throwing 90 feet or whatever, or whatever it is. It's 60 feet.
60 and 6.
Yeah. So, but they do those overextended throws like 90 feet at 50%. Right. And they track the velocity on everyone, little less, little more. So, but you look at the number of shoulder and Tommy John surgeries on their pitchers, 0. Yeah. They don't throw high velocity until their games, and they never throw well.
And I bet they don't do it young either.
I was going to say, no, they do not. They do not at all. Dude, we've got a kid here, local, absolute stud. He's had 2 Tommy Johns and he's 17.
Yeah. Like that's the goal now, though, to bring him up and just get it done, get it out of the way, because then you're fine.
Well, you pick up an extra mile an hour on your fastball, your arm will never work right, but it's good.
Well, what's the guy? What's the young one that we had? Why can't I think of his name? He had 101 average on his fastballs in this tournament. Average.
Okay. Yeah.
Like
that's Rolandis Chapman stuff.
That's unreal. But this tournament, the World Baseball Classic has been so fun because it's fun. Like I've heard a lot of the guys that were Jeff Passan is one of the baseball insiders that I really like. Does a lot of good reporting on stuff. He was talking about like the guys that are on the US team put this team together 6 days before their first game. Yeah. And the Japanese team has been playing together. They play in the Olympics together. Like they do everything, like kind of like soccer, like the same national team plays all the time. He's like, these guys have said that this is the most fun that they've had playing baseball since they were in high school. Yeah. Like, cause it feels like when baseball was fun again, and like watching the games, you would never imagine. I mean, the Caribbean countries and the South American countries, they are rabid baseball fans.
Oh yeah.
Like
fanatical. It is, Puerto Rico's insane.
Oh, and Venezuela even. And like all of these are just wild games. And it makes it like so much fun. And like, I'm watching them and they're hearing them talking about it. Like, man, that, and we're trying to put pitch clocks on stuff to make like it. What I heard somebody say on a radio show I listened to, like, we can't make it fun, so we'll just make it fast. Like, well, like, in the US.
Well, that's what they're doing in high school now in Kentucky, is they have a 20-second pinch count after the toe on the rubber, and the batter can never leave the box now. They have to keep 1 foot in at all times.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so you see a lot of these kids, right foot's planted. They step the left foot out of the box, adjust the helmet, come back in. But yeah, it's to me, that was, chess is not a very exciting game to watch, but the intricacy and the detail of chess is massive. Gi jiu-jitsu is not exactly the funnest thing to watch because it's very stationary and pinpoint precision, but it takes a shit ton of skill to do that. That to me has always been baseball. My son played a travel tournament down in Alabama, and I can't remember the team, but they were a top 2 or 3 team out of Florida. And it's like Florida, California, Texas, those states' ranking of baseball is like, it's a different world in those states because they play year round, and, but we were playing this team, and oh my God, as a parent, as a competitor myself, watching this kid comes out, and it's like, if you can't see this on YouTube, but it's like when a pitcher's just funneling through the pitches, he's flipping his glove around. He would do that he would do it, catch a pitch, set up, and he'd be like, shake it off, and he'd do it again.
He just wants the one pitch every time.
He'd step off the rubber. But they were doing it intentionally because it was that deal where the games were 90 minutes and there was a cutoff. They were up, but we were starting to gain on them. So for 2 innings, they played this crap. But that is allowable
Yeah.
in the game of baseball.
Yeah.
And a smart manager will use everything they can to expose the rules
Oh
within the
yeah.
rules,
Within
you
the
know,
rules.
and
Exactly.
yeah.
That's why
So
all the drugs were fine for a while until they weren't,
yeah,
you know,
but
like
yeah, for sure. And it's like it's a cool game because it is what it is, and
yeah.
that's what I hate when they start trying. That's why they didn't change baseball very much forever. You
Yeah.
know, it's like they changed the balls around, they changed some bat specifics. You know, of course, the gloves and the cleats and all that evolved, but the game stayed the same.
Right.
And I think that's why I just think that's why I love it. Plus, I'm becoming an old man very rapidly. So,
Dude, my like some of my earliest memories with my grandpa was like we'd go out to his house and he would just have Mariners games on all the time.
mhm,
Like that was what
yep.
we'd do. We'd sit down and watch. And that was when I was that age was when Ichiro first came to
Oh,
Seattle.
dude,
And it was like and he was my grandpa couldn't get enough watching Ichiro. It was and
dude,
I
they
get it.
sold
It was the
sushi at the
best, man.
stadium.
Yeah.
They sold sushi at the stadium when
Yeah.
he pitched.
Yes.
Like it changed the culture of baseball.
Yes.
Ichiro, Hideo Nomo was
Still,
first.
like still,
Yeah, yeah,
if you go back to Japan, he's Michael Jordan. He is the most famous person in that
yeah.
country
Well,
today.
think about this, man. Like he played, I don't know, remember the years. It was 8, 10, 12 years or so. It might have been 8 or 10, but anyway, he played in Japanese professional baseball for years, and then comes to America, plays another career in baseball, gets over 3,000 hits. Like he missed the prime of his life in American baseball and still got 3,000 hits.
Yeah,
You know, and if you look at his accumulative, he outpaced Pete Rose.
yeah,
So
and
it,
his arm from I mean that was just the most unbelievable. Like watching him throw from right field fence to third base on no hops and throw a dude
yeah.
out, like
Well,
just unreal.
He and Vlad Guerrero were in at the same time, and dude,
Yeah.
Vlad was that way.
Yep.
Just had an absolute cannon. Of course, I go back to my childhood. I remember watching Bo throw out Reynolds at
Yes.
home plate
I had
on a
lunch with
wa-
Harold Reynolds once. I
Did you
ever tell you
really?
that story?
No,
we, not to interrupt, but I was like, I always tell
no,
that
go
story
for
because
it.
it's fun. A buddy of mine, my best friend and I got invited to he was a quarterback in high school. He got invited to a quarterback only
Hmm.
camp down in Pasadena,
Hmm.
and he got to bring two receivers with him to come to the camp. And so me and another friend, so the three of us went down there. We went down with his older brother, flew down there like we were 17, went with his older brother, like no parents with us for the first time, whatever. We're at this camp,
Yeah.
and there's guys from all over the country are there at this quarterback camp to get extra work because I think it was Jeff Tricky quarterback camp,
Oh,
and
Jeff Tricky.
yeah, and so we went out there in Pasadena, and Harold Reynolds' nephew was at the camp. So
Mm.
this was like my first exposure to famous people ever, and it was
Hmm.
kind of wild on who was there. So Harold Reynolds' nephew was there.
Hmm.
Wayne Gretzky's son was there. Snoop Dogg's son, Spank, was there. And,
Spank Dog.
yeah. and and then there was a couple other Matt Barkley,
Hmm.
who he played for USC and then went and he had a couple he was right after Leinart, I think, at USC was the Matt Barkley years. But there was these guys, I mean, they were just unreal players, and like us
Yeah.
us three little like Southern Idaho farmer boys show up and like we're like, well, this is pretty cool, like
Yep.
we're getting and we're catching passes from these guys. And I'll tell you, I've never caught a ball that was thrown harder in my life than the ball that Matt Barkley threw.
Really?
Like I did a 4 yard slant from like the very edge of the numbers, and he threw it and it turned around and it stopped my heart. Like
Yeah.
it zipped straight like the tip of the football right in the middle of my sternum, and I caught
Yeah.
it because I wasn't going to not catch a ball at this thing here and be dropping balls. And so I catch it, and I literally like almost wanted to black out because it stopped my heart.
Yep.
And but we went to get back to the story. So um, our friend's older brother watching us was sitting up
Hmm.
in the little stands or whatever watching, and just starts hanging out with Harold Reynolds all day because he's there watching his nephew. And
Yeah.
so they strike up a conversation, they're talking and stuff, and after the first day he's like, hey, you guys want to go get some lunch? So he took us to like this little sandwich shop and we chatted with him for like, I don't know, we were there for like an hour. He bought us lunch, and then he found out that my friend that was the quarterback was also a baseball player. And actually my other two friends were, and he sent them all a bunch of his instructional DVDs Like
Oh,
he's like, give me your guys' address. When you guys get home, I'll have a box of stuff sent to you, like catching DVDs and all this kind of stuff. And he sent them all to him. I'm like,
that's
that was
awesome.
pretty rad. He was just super cool.
Do you remember the Tom Amansky drills? Did you ever see that video set?
I don't
It
know
was
if
with
I did.
Fred McGriff was on there, but that was like every Saturday morning I would see Kings Island commercials and Tom Amansky baseball skill set commercials.
Nice.
And but a similar situation. I was at Disney World with Sornex one time. There was a conference there, a strength conference,
Yeah.
and they also had a show out football camp there. Well, Dion was there,
Oh,
and he was being Dion, like he was in it. He was in his element, and
is he ever
I was
not Dion though?
for
Like...
sure. But I was jacked as hell at that time. I was
Oh
like
yeah.
320, 330, and he said, "My God, get this man some pads." And I said, "Coach, I said I'd love to play, but I got bad knees." He looked at me, and I showed him my knee. He said, "That ain't gonna work. Get on out of here." He said, "Get on out of here." But he came back around. He was laughing and stuff. But it was a 30-second interaction. But he was
Yeah.
super funny, super nice.
That's awesome.
I've gained a lot of respect for him over the years, especially now that he's in college football and what he was doing down at Jackson State.
Yeah.
Dude, I don't know. I'll say this: as much as I've bitched about social media on this podcast, he is somebody that has taken it into a forum where I would almost think it would be taboo. Like kind of like when Louis started putting his information out.
Yeah.
He was the first guy in powerlifting to like really start pushing the secrets.
Yeah.
Well, you take Dion. He's like, I got this tool that can reach more kids 18 to 22 than anything else I know how.
Yep.
I can't have recruiters in every city and every school.
Yeah.
So I'm going to use this forum, and I'm going to show you what we do. I'm going to show you that it's fun, that it's family oriented, that it is motivational, that it is driven by a purpose, a vision. And he's got unorthodox measures. But I talked to his strength coach. I talked to athletes that played for him at Jackson State. Those dudes would run through hell in gas-soaked jeans for him. I mean, and as a coach, and here's the other thing, and to go all the way back to imposter syndrome,
yeah,
that is a dude that gains belief because he did it.
Yes.
He was not an imposter. He's not a 70-year-old white man standing up there saying, run them hard, boys, run them hard. Right. He's like, if you want to get to the league, this is what you're going to have to do. Yep. And I can tell you, I played with men like you, and I beat you.
He's like, I made it to both leagues.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. But so it was him, Bo, and Brian Jordan. Him and Brian Jordan were on the Falcons and the Braves together. Did you know crazy.
That? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Brian Jordan he's a hell of a baseball player, probably a better baseball player than football, but him and Dion did it together. And there might have been a little difference in time, but I think there was a year or two they overlapped. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, Bo, Bo was God when I was a kid. I cried like a bitch when he got hurt by the Bengals.
Yeah.
I love the Bengals, but I love Bo Jackson more. And I'm watching this game. Dude, I had on the Raiders jersey. I had on the Raiders, the all black Bo Jackson shoes. And I'm sitting there just like happy as could be. And when I watched him fall, dude, I cried forever. But I can tell you when I cried more, I was a big White Sox fan. And he came back and played for the White Sox. His first at bat, after he got hurt, he promised his mother that he would come back. He's like, I'm going to come back.
Yeah.
And she passed away before that game. And before the game, he said, I'm just dedicating this promise to my mom. And then he hits a bomb. I mean, the doctors told him he would never walk correctly again, let alone ever play a sport.
Right.
And he hits a home run, his first hit. And then he actually had another couple of years in the league at a pretty high level. I mean, he wasn't Bo of pre-injury, but he was definitely qualified. I saw a study
better
on
than
him.
Probably half the league anyway.
Oh yeah. But I saw a study on his leg velocity. They were using this was a platform, kind of like the jump thing where it measures your velocity through the floor. Similar thing, but they said that his was like the equivalent. I don't remember the animal. It wasn't a horse, but it was off the scale of what
wasn't a human.
Yeah, it was like, this is not actually humanly possible.
Yeah.
And he changed the metric on human measurement in that plane was just his ability to drive velocity through the ground. And I don't know, man. I've just become more recently, like Gordon Ryan was probably a big motivator in this direction because I was watching a lot of jiu-jitsu. I was watching a lot of his instructionals. and it reinvigorated that level of expertise and dominance.
Yeah.
Like I remember like when Tyson in 85, 86, 87, 88, like before Buster Douglas, like he was terrifying because we bought the pay-per-views. My papa would buy every pay-per-view and then cuss the screen when it was over in the first round. But that's why you bought it. If it went to the third round, you're like, what the hell's wrong with Tyson?
Right.
You know, you were looking for that level of dominance. And I've gone back through some rabbit holes. Dude, I was watching George Foreman videos from the 60s.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit. So some of these guys, man, at that level, and to look at some of these people that really do have imposter syndrome, like the I'll see red guys when it comes to fighting,
Yeah.
you know, it's just at that level, man.
They don't know me, man.
Yeah, they don't know where I go, bro. They don't know where I go inside. But even, you know, I've seen some high level grappling. I've seen some definitely high level fighting. But you take a black belt in any local gym that has got merit for their belting system, that black belt will look to a white belt that good.
Right.
So to understand that in a gym in somewhere, wherever, that black belt is that far above his competition. And then you go to Gordon Ryan, who would make that black belt look like a white belt.
Look like a white belt.
It's just incredible, that level of expertise and dominance. Like I absolutely, I wouldn't say obsess about it, but like from a standpoint of emulation,
yeah,
I look at guys like that to figure out, okay, what's their separator? What are they doing that's like a little different? And to bring this whole thing, my whole thought process full circle, that has been highly beneficial.
Yeah.
But when I trained with Chuck Vogelpol at Westside, I did everything he did, same weights, same reps, same sets, and I got worse. Okay. Because those were the models that Chuck needed to progress.
Right.
I should have trained lighter on certain things. I should have trained heavier on certain things. I should have done more reps on certain things, and I should have done fewer reps on certain things. But because I wanted to be like Chuck, hell, I even started wrapping my knees in the same sequence that he wrapped his,
yeah.
just to see if those things were the separate markers. That's just testing. But if you stay in that lane because that's what he's doing, and you think, okay, all the feedback says this doesn't work, but because I like him as a competitor, I'm going to keep doing these things. You rob yourself of the competition or the competitor that you can become.
Yeah.
And so that's just the thing, man. I've always admired excellence. I've always tried to strive for excellence, but it was the excellence at a level of how I wanted to pursue it, while observing people who had done it.
Right.
And I think that's kind of a weird wrap up point for me on that topic, but I think that's the truth of it. You have to learn from experience, but you can't fake your own experience.
Right.
Exactly.
My wrap up point will be this, to tie back to funny broadcasters.
Perfect.
Have you ever listened to Randy Moeller? He's the Florida Panthers guy.
Yep.
So if you
I love hockey. Dude, I love hockey.
If you're listening and you haven't listened to Randy Moeller goal calls, go on YouTube and there's a bunch of them. He literally he's the most animated, but he will throw in movie lines into the end of his goal calls that have nothing to do with anything. And there's like compilation videos of all of them. And my favorite one ever was what's the hostage video with Harrison Ford where they take his son.
Not Clear Present Danger.
Why can't I think of the name of it?
I can't think of it either.
But they has the goal call and he goes, "Goal! Give me back my son!" But he has like all of them. They're so great. So
the best sports broadcaster though is Bob Menery.
Oh man, he is just, I can't believe he doesn't do it for real. I mean, like he does.
I can't believe a team hasn't hired him.
That's what I mean. Like he is legitimately awesome, but he carved out this lane of being super hilarious and inappropriate. So it's like, I get it, but have you seen the videos of when him and Joe Buck are together? Like they know each other and they'll just go back and forth. It's so funny, man.
I love when he comments on Little League. Holy shit, this pitcher sucks. What the hell's wrong with this kid? Got a little too tipsy on Coca-Cola at the sleepover last night.
So good. Oh, man. All right, we'll call it there. That's a funny place to wrap it. So
that's all good, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah.